Have you tried playing a new game and you're kind of not sure where to start? Or have you got your favorite board games and wish you knew some of the other strategies to play them with? Well, you're in for a treat. In this video, I've put together some of the board game designers or publishers' tips for some of your favorite board games coming up. Hi everyone, hope you're well. It's Stella from Meeple University. Welcome back to my Tabletop diary. This is the fourth strategy videos I've done. Hopefully you used some of the tips so far in the previous episode and crushing your opponents and all. In this episode, more coming your way from these lovely designers who sent me these tips. I found they are usually the best people to give tips. After all, they're the board games designers. Before we get into it, I want to let you know that you could put in the comment sections below if you like a board game to be featured in this series, and I'll try my best to get it. And I've also added timestamp below this video, so if you want to go right to a particular game you want to see that, you could. So here are the tips, starting with Paladins of the West Kingdom by Shem Phillips.
Hi, my name is Shem Phillips. I'm the owner of Garfield Games and the co-designer of this game, Paladins of the West Kingdom. Stella from Meeple University has asked me to give you some quick tips on how you might play this game. It's about to come out to retail, so having a little bit of advice for your first game may actually help you. We'll see. So in this game, you have this large player board. The left side is all about engine building and resource gathering. So you're going to want to do some of that. What I want to talk to you about is the right side of the board. This is where you're going to be scoring points and where you're really going to focus your strategy. So for an opening game, what we recommend is focusing on just two of these. And the two that we're talking about are in the columns. The reason for that is that, as you can see here, commission and absolve. So on the left side of these banners, it tells you what the attribute you need is. So commission requires faith and will give you influence. Absolve requires influence and will give you faith. Now these ones also have the red banner, which is strength. So one good strategy to start the game with is to basically do a top and bottom that match for the reason that they ignore one of the three attributes. So if you're commissioning, you're going to be using your faith to get influence, which is going to help you power absolve because you have influence, give you more faith, and these basically synergize well together. And if you have time in the game, you can then use those two attributes to help power up your strength in the last few rounds of the game. You might do fortify and attack, which would just be ignoring faith, or garrison and convert, which ignores influence. So that's a good kind of first game thing. Just pick two and go with them. In future games, you're going to be wanting to probably do 4, maybe 5 of these quite strong, but it takes a while to get used to how all the mechanisms work in the game. Another strategy you might want to try for your first game is to just focus on just the top or just the bottom. And the reason for that is that the top ones all require provisions and the bottom all have to do with silver. So if you focus only on top or bottom, you can essentially ignore one of the two resources in the game. So I hope that helps. Enjoy your first game. If you have any questions, just ask away and we'll help you out.
Hi, I'm Ryan Iler from Wonderment Games, the designer of Quodd Heroes. I want to thank Stella for asking me to do this little video where I give some tips and strategies for getting the most fun out of Quodd Heroes. And without further ado, let's get started. The first tip I have for Quodd Heroes isn't really about gameplay. It's about using the resources that the Quodd Heroes community have created to benefit you. I have created a tutorial video, which you can find on YouTube. And there's also an FAQ and updated rules and that kind of thing. Okay, so the first gameplay tip is don't forget that you have 2 miniatures. One of these is the miniature that you have on the board. The other is for you to hold in your hand and figure out your moves. So if you have a complex move involving multiple tumbles, for example, figuring that out on the board with your active mini is a bad idea because it's important that this miniature on the board stays in the same orientation. So while you're waiting for other players to take their turn and you're sort of figuring out what you're going to do on your next turn, you can sort of plan that out by referencing your player board and using your second miniature. The second tip from a gameplay perspective is to use your tumble skill, which is this one. I'll show a close-up of it, as often as you can. The reason you want to do that is because it lengthens your turn. So you always have your natural tumble at the start of your turn, as I'm sure you know. But your tumble skill lets you extend that farther and then activate the skill that's on top after that. Unless it's a tumble again. You can only activate your tumble skill once during a turn. That will get you much farther than you would if you just tumbled onto a particular skill. Of course, sometimes that's not an option, and sometimes it's not the right move. However, oftentimes, when you're trying to get far across the board, using your tumble skill every turn, if you possibly can, is a very good strategy. The next tip, and this one maybe isn't obvious, especially to new players, and that is explore, explore, explore. You have upgrade tiles, and at the end of each round, you're going to be choosing an upgrade tile to place on your board. The numbers 1, 2, 3 upgrades have both a movement point and on the opposite side, an explore icon, which gets you more cards at the end of your turn. New players will often gravitate to just getting movement because they want to go as far as they can on the board. However, that's not necessarily ideal because cards are very powerful. So having cards not only can extend how far you can move on the board, but gives you lots of other options in terms of gameplay. And so I recommend that at least one of your upgrades during the course of the game, especially early on, is one that gives you additional explore. The next tip is to use tokens whenever possible. Those either on the board or ones that you can place through cards. The reason for that is that they're going to extend your move in many cases. So something like a spring, for example, placed directly in front of you, and you tumble onto it, gets you to here, and you're essentially starting your turn three spaces ahead of where you would have normally. One of the things that I think a lot of new players that I watch play the game is they often will put tokens near the start of their movement. That's fine, for example, if you are placing a spring, which helps you move. However, with tokens like tunnels and teleporters, your movement ends after you activate the tunnel or the teleporter. When placing these tokens, look at the range on the card and try to figure out how to get that token near the end of your planned movement. So you would place it before you move, somewhere on the board, so that you're going to reach that point and then you're going to land on the teleporter or the tunnel, for example, and then extend your movement that much farther. That way you're using your resources as efficiently as possible. Another token-related tip is that tokens can be placed basically anywhere on the board, and that includes on walls. While not necessarily intuitive, placing a token on a wall essentially removes the wall from the game so that you can pass through that space. My last tip, and this is perhaps not so much of a tip as kind of a way to think about playing the game. My recommendation, especially in your first handful of games, that you just play as loose and fast as possible. Don't try too hard to plan out every nuance of your move. Look at the cards in your hand, say, I want to extend my movement, and just tumble and see what happens. I think that way you'll learn how your movements and your cards sort of work without really sitting there and trying to boil it down. It helps you sort of get into and enjoy the game more, I think, especially on your first few plays. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, and this has been Ryan from Wonderment Games, signing off and hoping that you have lots of fun with Quodd Heroes. Thanks. Bye.
Hi, I'm Sam Macdonald, designer of Circadians First Light, and Stella from Meeple University has asked me to give you some tips for your first play of Circadians First Light. So I'm going to give you 3 tips to help you in your first play. The first thing to note is you're going to be moving a harvester on this planet. So everyone's going to start with their harvester on the middle. And the key thing here is that the further out you get from the middle, in any direction, is going to benefit you more. You're going to get more resources at the end of the round. So you want to think about what resources you're wanting to spend in your strategy and move out in that direction as far as possible. That's the first thing to note. The second thing to note is that most of your scoring actions will cost you your dice. So it's a dice worker placement game, and most of the scoring actions will put your dice on the board permanently, so you're not going to get them back. So you need to manage your dice well. You can have a maximum of 5 dice. So when you spend a die to score points,
you're going to want to find a way of getting dice back so that you can maximize your turns each round. The final thing that I want to point out is that everyone is given a player power. So we've got a bunch of player powers in Circadians First Light, and they're very powerful and they're quite game breaking. And so you really need to play to your power. So I'll point out one here. This is Roslyn. At the end of the round, if you have less than 5 dice, which is the max, you gain 1 die each round. So when you're playing with Roslyn, what you're wanting to do is spend at least 1 die on scoring each round, and then you don't have to worry about recruiting more dice. So try and spend 1 each round, even in the early rounds. Try and build a small item, that sort of thing, and then you'll always be at your maximum dice limit, and you'll be able to be very efficient. Or with Troy, he gets to spend less resources when actioning dice at the negotiation board. And the key thing with Troy is you can get in first and you can get those advancements. So make sure you rush the really cheap spots for very little resources for Troy and get as many advancements as you can. All right, well, hopefully that will help you. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy your first play of Circadians First Light.
Thanks guys for the tips. Well, hopefully these tips are useful. If you've discovered tips for these board games yourself, please feel free to write in the comment sections below if you like, and watch out for the next episodes. If you enjoyed this video, please help us by hitting the like button and subscribe to us. You can also click the Meeple in the corner and hit the bell so you'll be notified of our next videos, including the next series of these board game strategies. Check me out on Instagram for my board game journeys, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much guys for watching. Have a great day.